This week's episode of the Change Guru This week's episode of the Change Guru bleh. This week's episode In this week's episode of the Change Guru podcast, I think it's one of my most important ones that I've done in a long time because it focuses on the concept of changing your life, but also having a big risk. One of the gals on my newsletter, Tracy, wants to know how she can transition from a long-time career that she's desperate to get out of, but she's worried that as a mom with 2 young kids, she's going to be very financially irresponsible if she goes off on a new journey to find something better for herself. So I give her advice from my own personal story. I share with her the biggest mistakes that I've made and what I would do differently if I knew what I know now. I think that whether or not you are going through a career change, any kind of change in your life where you feel that there's some risk that you just kind of can't wrap your head around, I think this podcast is going to help you make a cool decision. Enjoy the podcast. The Change Guru podcast is brought to you by my books, Be Your Own Change Guru and How to Find Your Purpose After 40. They're available on Amazon, and if you like the show, buying a book is an awesome way to show your support for what I'm doing. And now, here's the podcast.
The Change Guru. Listen up. You are the guru of your own midlife change. Gotta take it and own it, don't be restricted by age. What's the number anyway? Live your dreams, don't hesitate. You're the change guru, you're the change guru. This is the time to step up, make your dreams come true. Whatever the change, it all starts with you. Whether it's life's purpose, relationships or career. Whatever the change, it's time to get what you want, what you really, really want. Make a change in midlife and still look really hot. Listen here, don't have fear. You're the master of your fate, you're the woman of the year. I mean it, change your life forever. I mean it, it's not too late, no never. I said I mean it, change your life forever. I mean it, it's not too late, no never, ever, yeah. The Change Guru, all starts with you.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Change Guru. This is a place where we have a weekly conversation about life after 40, things midlife, all the stuff that we go through when we get to a point where we can kind of stand on a mountain and go, okay, how did I get here? What's going on? Where am I going to go next? That's what this is all about. My name is Sue Paget. I'm coming at you from my couch in Sydney, Australia, where I'm looking out the window right now. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. We've had crazy, crazy wild weather this week, and I love it when it's been really, really rainy, and just crazy wind and all of that stuff. Like, we had cyclonic winds going on and just driving rain. And I love that when that is over with and the weather subsides and gets normal, how it's almost like it was a massive cleanse, a massive detox. It's like the world gets a beautiful shampoo and it's so clean and crystal clear and calm. It's nothing like how the week started out. So that was an exciting part of the week. I did lose power for the day, and that reminded me a really good thing to do is, if you live in a stormy situation, is to always keep your stuff backed up and to always have things plugged in through the night as you sleep. I often do that, but this particular day, I don't know why I didn't plug in my computer. I didn't plug in my phone, so by the time I got going in the morning and went to work and then the power was off, I was down to about 30% charge, which was kind of like meh, but you know what? It got me to do other things while I waited for the power to go back on. So that's my little power tip. What else can I tell you about this week? I did a video this week on my ongoing gray hair adventure where I really challenged the idea about this being a brave thing. I started off feeling like it was something that you really needed to feel brave about, and I did feel a lot of fear. But as time's gone on, and as time's gone on, I'll keep where I'm going. As time's gone on, that fear really isn't there. it's getting used to it, and it's kind of moving on in my mindset and feeling really good that I backed myself. I backed my decision. This feels like a great move for me, and it's also a beauty move, and it really makes me crazy how we get so invested in our physical side that we attach so much fear to it, and that even as women who are, who should know better, we still kind of go back to the insecurities that we went through as teenagers and having those fears and feeling like we need to be brave to do something that is against the grain. So that was the thing that I wanted to say. I also get so inspired by so many of your stories. I get really amazing letters every day and meet so many awesome women online. I think some of you don't even know how brave you are, and maybe that's just kind of the way it is as women, that we don't really acknowledge the actual true acts of bravery that we do sometimes on a daily basis. So this is a real time to, especially if you're going through the gray hair adventure, is to kind of ask yourself, what am I doing that is actually really brave? What is a real demonstration of brave? And if you can find that reference point of something really, something that you're doing that you have to be brave to do, you compare it to your gray hair adventure and you go, this really isn't, I'm kind of stretching things when I call it brave. So that was the point that I wanted to get across in the video. So you can check that out on YouTube at Susan Padgett TV, or on my website at thechangeguru.net, or on my Facebook page. I'm coming to the finishing parts of the final draft of my gray hair book. I'm torn between what to call it, and what I might do is, if you're on my email list, I might send out I'm not sure, unless I come up with it for sure. I might get your advice on some titles that I'm working with. I also intend to send a sample chapter to those of you on my email list, so I can get your opinion and get you excited and bring you along on this journey to putting my book out there. I know there's a lot of you that have books in you that you want to write, so I want to figure out a way to share my process and how I go through it, and that's what you're going to get if you come on over to my newsletter over at thechangeguru.net. You'll see a little opt-in form. Last thing to tell you about what I'm up to is I'm making some really big changes on my website. It's the first kind of upgrade that I've done in the last couple of years. I finally have help doing it, which is amazing. And something brand new for me. I've been doing pretty much everything on my own, but I've called in some reinforcements to help me do stuff, and so I'm going to get that done. But it's there'll be some issues on my website. It'll look crazy. It'll look like the crazy guru. So just bear with me. But that's the part, and I'll probably talk a little bit about this in a way in the podcast today. That's just a part of the change process. It's a part of, when you are in a career, especially in the online space, you have to constantly keep changing and trying new things and making mistakes and figuring out what works and putting yourself out there. It's a constant reinvention of all that. So, that's what I'm doing. So, I hope that you are plugged into my website, and I'll definitely make an announcement when I've got some new stuff. But you should be seeing some changes coming as soon as I can do them. Girl can only run so fast. If I sound tired, I am really tired. I was up all night long writing, which is great because I'm enthused, but it's never a great feeling. It always reminds me of when I was in high school and would go to the prom in California, and what you do when you go to the prom is you stay out all night long, and then you come and then you go to breakfast or whatever, and you just feel you feel wrecked for the next few days. So my sisters and I, we kind of have like this code word when we've had a really big night. It's like, I'm going to be in a prom mode, and that's what I'm going to be in today, prom mode. So that's probably why I sound a little sleepy, but I am really excited for today's podcast. In fact, today's podcast, I always kind of block out my notes and what I'm going to talk about, but this topic is so big that I have tried to do it several times, and I've just completely given up, and I'm just going to wing it. Now, I'm going to be really talking off the top of my head because this is a huge topic, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer a question from one of the gals who's an insider on my newsletter named Tracy, and here is the question that she asks. How do I balance a salary after a long career versus wanting to change, starting with less? The real money question for me is the money question. I have 2 young children, and she's 45 years old, and I so desperately want a change from my work life, but I can't walk away from the money. It's not fiscally responsible to put my family through less. So she wants some guidance on what steps she can take. So my answers are going to be coming from a few different places. Number one, we all are from different places on the globe, and when you have to make a career change, that really matters. For example, in America, careers being a long-term career is not just about career and about your salary. It's also about your health care and insurance plans, but also your retirement plans, but healthcare is the most important thing. Here in Australia, that is not so much of an issue. Our government takes care of our healthcare, and you can also choose to have private insurance if you want to, but for many women, it would be wrong for me to say, quit your job, you'll be fine, because a lot, especially when you have young kids, healthcare is an absolute issue. I remember when my family and I were living in America, we did a California chapter for a while, and we were self-employed, and we had the most basic healthcare ever. We had our own health care. It was so expensive, we could barely afford it, and we were terrified when the kids would get sick, as kids do. I think actually we had some serious incidences where we went through a run of being in the hospital a couple times, and we were just so frightened of what would happen if something very, very serious happened. And even, just little things like going to the doctors was so expensive just for a regular checkup. So other countries might also have government-provided health care, so there's not as much at stake. But I can really appreciate, Tracy, I'm not positive if you're writing me from the U.S., but I'm going to take a punt that you are, because when you have the potential of losing benefits that you're very used to, it's definitely something to consider. I also want to come from the perspective that as a mom, my kids are grown up now. I don't have 2 small children underfoot. Oh, I wish I did. Tracy, if I could, I'd come over to your house right now, and I'd say, Tracy, you just go on and do whatever job you want, because I'm going to just babysit your kids. I'd be the best mom to young kids right now. I just love kids right now. I feel like I finally would know how to be a really good mom. I know I was a good mom when I was doing it, but I was kind of flying blind. But right now, I think I'd be just the most bitchin' mom. So, look, I'm coming from a paradigm of a mom who's already done it with raising kids and juggling a career, and what happens when you put certain priorities during that time into your kids, what happens when they grow up, get out. So I'm going to put that kind of spin on it. I'm also going to tell you that I have a long history of continually starting over in my life and taking chances in my life. There is an element of risk, and it is scary when you want to make a big change. I am very used to making change in my life. I'm very used to taking educated chances in my life, and I'm also very used to doing things that are against what is normal, what the average person does. I mean, okay, you can to it on a physical level say the gray hair thing, but when I was 21, I met my husband. We fell in love on the night we met, and then quit everything we were doing in our lives to travel, got married a year later, and I moved to Australia. And it was a time before emails, before I don't even think fax machines were invented. It was an incredibly radical move for me to leave everything that seemed, in quotes, really promising in my life, to go and to live in a country, at the end of the earth. But that was one of a series of big moves, not moves in the actually moving sense, but big decisions that my husband and I made in our life, where we used a combination of our intellect, our intuition, and just faith that we're safe, faith that when you do what you love, things work out. So that is an attitude that is not something for everyone. And I really, really respect that. So some of the things I'm saying may work for you. They may be things you have to wrap your head around for, and they also might be things that you completely reject. But I want to come at you from that space, and I also am going to come at you in this with this topic from a coaching headspace, because there's some interesting little bits in your language that we'll get to in a bit that I think might actually help be some aha moments or some light bulb moments for you. Now, if you're not going through what Tracy's going through, that's completely cool, because this really is the it's symbolic for all the kinds of changes that we want, knowing that it's kind of about being in one circumstance, in a circumstance that's comfortably uncomfortable, and knowing that you kind of need to take a step, but it looks so uncomfortable, that step, and so unknown and so uncertain that you just there's just too much fear around to actually go in that direction. So we can take that with anything, right? Whether it's relationships, life purpose, whatever. Okay, I'm going to just have a sip of my coffee. I've got a double espresso going. It's very good. All right, let's get to Tracy's question. So I want to talk about 3 different areas with your question, Tracy, and everybody. And let's start with, you mentioned about starting over. So, you've been in a career for a long time, and wanting to make a change means starting over. Well, I'll tell you one thing that has only dawned on me very recently. I'm in the thick, I'm in the trenches of doing just that. I left a career as a freelance television producer with a pretty reliable income and network of people to go and find work that was about living my purpose. And it put me on a path where I literally had to strip down and completely start all over. I stopped taking jobs. So, when the phone would ring, I would say, sorry, I'm not doing this kind of work anymore. And then eventually the phone stopped ringing. And so I was left with no work. Fortunately, and this is another disclaimer, because my husband is employed, and because also my children were pretty much out of the house at this time, we didn't have the financial responsibilities that we did when they were younger. So I was in a position where it was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay for me to be unemployed and start working out what I wanted to do for the next chapter of my life. It was okay for me to be unemployed and go back to school. One thing, though, that's really occurred to me, here I am probably 3 years in on that journey, and one thing that's really occurred to me that I don't know how I missed it, but that's when you start over, you are starting over. Like, I imagined that because I was quite established in what I was doing, I pretty much knew what I was doing, and I'd been doing it for 15 years in the media business, so I knew what I was doing. But when you start over in a whole new career, even though I'm doing some of the skill set from my old work, everything's brand new for me. And it is like when I first started to work in the media. I had to do the things, I had to skin my knees, I had to start learning, meeting people, I had to start learning my craft. And I think the misconception is you feel like, okay, I've done this career for a long time, and I'm just going to move seamlessly into my next career, and everything's going to be there for me. And for me, it was kind of funny recently when I realized that, it's funny that I thought the things were going to be kind of sort of the same. I thought that a lot of things were going to be really easy, but in a way, I am starting over. And not only starting over and starting a new business, I'm having to do in this new business things that I never did in my old career. So they are like starting complete new skill sets over. I never had to do marketing in my old career. I never had to work in the online space, which is a whole other animal. I could do a whole other podcast about that. And if you're interested in if you're thinking about doing a career online, please let me know, because I've got so much to say and advice and insight to give on that. But just to keep things, I don't know what area you're thinking of for your next career, but online space. I had no sales experience. I didn't have to do any of that. As a producer, all I had to do was find stories, write scripts, write research briefs, make sure camera guys and sound guys didn't get upset about the hotel that we were staying. I mean, it was that kind of stuff. I did not have to worry about the things that promoted what I was doing. And when you run your own business, those are things that you have to know. And there's absolute science to doing. There's also completely new ways of doing them online, different ways that you would ever do in a bricks and mortar situation. So as much as I wish that you could seamlessly slide over into a new career, it's a massive learning curve, and you almost do yourself a disservice by going in with the mindset that you don't want to start over. I've just really embraced the idea, and I sent a newsletter out about it recently that you'll get eventually, of the idea of embracing the concept of starting over, of giving myself the grace that I did when I was a younger woman embarking on a media career. I knew then that I'd have to pay my dues. I knew I had a lot to learn, and I didn't give myself pressure about starting over or starting up. In fact, maybe it's even helpful to change the language of starting over to just, you're doing a startup. It's very techy, and there's maybe another bit of language to use if starting over is too loaded with fear for you. But for me, starting over, when I realized I'm going to give myself a little bit of cred here, I'm starting over, and it's going to be a learning curve exactly the way that it was. I also look at it from a logistics point of view, Tracy, in that starting over is fine for me right now in my early 50s, because I intend to live a really long time, and I also intend to be doing this in whatever way, shape, or form when I'm in my 70s, 80s, 90s. I see no point in my life when I retire. I'll work as hard as I can till it's not absolutely possible. I think for me, that's a healthy option. It's a creative option. I don't feel like we reach our peak at this stage of life at all. So I embrace the concept of starting over, because I feel like that's going to be a really responsible way to financially look after. And you mentioned fiscal responsibility. I think that's the most financially responsible thing that I can do right now in my life, because based on what I'm seeing from our elderly parents, people are losing their homes and trying to afford their nursing homes. They're doing it really tough because they've retired so young and retired too young, and the pension isn't applicable to the cost of living right now. I also feel that we are living in a completely changing economy where almost the concept of a salary job, or being paid per hour kind of job is people are getting laid off. I think this is one of those examples of the traditional aspects of our life completely changing. I follow a lot of the work of James Altucher, and I'll leave a link for him in the show notes for this episode. But I really align with what he's saying about this. He has a book called Choose Yourself. This right now is a choose yourself economy. There's a reason why people are really super unhappy with their careers right now, and that's because resources are we're expected to work much longer hours than for what we're paid. We're expected to commute far, to have jobs. We are being downsized. We're not having the types of guarantees anymore that we used to have. And then add to the fact that we're an aging population, and if people are thinking about retiring or losing their jobs, there's going to be this whole section of people that actually need to work but are unemployed. So we're kind of setting ourselves up for a really strange time right now. In fact, this is one of those, I feel like when they look back on history, they'll almost think of this time as a combination, just an absolute... it's like in a way, it's a renaissance, because so many things are falling over, and then there's so much rebirth, so much stuff being created. Like I think it's in Hindu culture, they call it, this is the time of the Kali Yuga, I think. Yogis listening can correct me on if my pronunciation or my interpretation's wrong, but it's just like the age of destruction. Things are falling over. Our currencies are falling over. We now can, get best medical advice absolutely online and don't have to go to our local doctor anymore. We can buy everything online, so we don't need to go to a bricks and mortar. We don't have to listen to the radio anymore. We can listen to podcasts. New businesses are being created all the time, and the old institutions, whether it's for me, who used to work in television, which is becoming an absolute dinosaur in every single way, these organizations, these companies are starting to fall over. We're going to see massive transition in every single way, shape, or form. So starting over is actually a brilliant thing, and I hope that this gives you, maybe if you can play around with some different language, different ways of looking at the concept of starting over, and seeing if there's other ways of looking at it that speak to you more, whether it's, I'm going to do a startup, or I'm just, I'm following my path, and whether it's something that needs where I'm going to have to require to learn new things and embrace uncertainty, etc., etc. That's what I'm doing. But starting over, I think, is actually a skill that if we don't have it, if you don't have the ability, the sensory acuity to start over right now, I think it's going to be very challenging. I think things are going to be, they'll be challenging if you don't have a mindset, a willingness to learn, a willingness to embrace this rapidly changing future and the technologies that are going with it, and that James Altucher concept of choosing yourself rather than letting other people, employers, make the decisions for you. Now, that said, this leads me to my second part of this very, very long-winded answer, but I feel like we're covering some great ground, because there's a lot to this, and that's the bottom line. It's the dollar bills, the money, the fiscal responsibility. I want to share with you a little secret about me from my first life of starting over, and that was when I first started my career in the media. My husband Dale and I, who he's still he's a television producer and journalist, and is awesome at what he does. But in those days, we both worked together. We started a little business from home. The reason why we did it from home was because we wanted to raise our kids at home. We had 3 little kids, really little, And so while everyone else was working, and this was a really different generation, this was a time before it was cool for dads to push prams. Dale would go, or strollers, as they say in America. Dale would go to all of our kids, like he would volunteer in the kids' classrooms, and people would wonder, like, who is this guy? Like, does he not have a job? But we just wanted to be at home with our kids, and that meant we had to have a completely different lifestyle than a lot of our peers who were working in offices and going up the career ladder, buying a home. We rented for the longest time. We lived in small apartments. That was all we could afford, but we wanted to be home with our kids. We had our office in our bedroom, so there would be all these like flashing red lights. I gotta admit, I didn't love that one at all, but we loved working together. It was awesome, but we reduced our finances so much. We lived really, really within and even kind of below our means, and we still managed to have an amazing life. We did a lot of travel with our family, and because of our work, we had access to be able to do amazing things. We loved each other. We still love each other. We just grew really close because of that time. And again, it was a different time, but our kids did not have all the things that you have right now that kids expect to have. At that time, there were no cell phones that kids had. There were no iPads. No one had a computer. There weren't TVs in every single room. There weren't even flat-screen televisions. But we did little things. Our kids didn't go to private school. They went to public school. They didn't have they weren't massive clothes horses. If they wanted to have certain kind of clothes, they had to get a job when they were, 15 years old. Everyone had to get a job. So I could go on and on about ways that we did not go with the grain of society, and we were fine. We were okay, but we also were able to really build our careers, and I guess finally get into this situation where my husband is doing well and respected in his career, and I was able to get to a point where I was able to jump and say I want to do something else, and that didn't happen from not reducing our expenses. So with money and fiscal responsibility, what it would be really cool to do, and one thing that I wish that I would have done while I was in the workforce before I began doing the Change Guru work, is I wish that I would have been more financially responsible towards my next career. In other words, I did not consider the amount of money that a startup would cost. And by startup, I mean, even though it literally costs it costs like nothing to start up online, really. It's, you can do so many things for free. It's incredible. But for me, starting over meant going back to school. I just went for it. I didn't consider the financial implications of that, and then I didn't consider, as you start building the business, there are expenses. So what I would have done differently when I was still at my old career and had that cushion of an income is I would have somehow started, number one, I would have gone to an independent financial advisor to say, hey, I want to make a move to a new career. I want to start figuring out a way to either put away money or start investing in certain things. And I would just get some really good, solid advice for this new chapter rather than winging it, which is something that I've had to do. I've actually had to now kind of backtrack and go that route, but I should have done it a few years before. The second thing I would have done when it comes to money and being fiscally responsible is that I've noticed this from writing my gray hair book, and I was calculating all the beauty expenses that I had to do when I was in my career, and it's actually frightening. Like, I used to go and get my hair dyed and blow dried. I used to get Brazilian waxes, leg waxes, armpit waxes, face waxes, facials, product, the clothes, What else did I do? Eyebrows done, mani-pedis, all of those things. And like writing this back, maybe it's why I couldn't sleep last night, because writing all this stuff back, I was like, oh my God, I spent so much money when I was making money on upkeep. And I get that these are things that you have to do. Another way to compare this is when women work and they are literally paying to work because they have to pay so much for childcare. So I would have really looked at my current expenses, because we tend to spend what we make. And I would have looked and said, is this really helping me in the long run? I know there was an immediate benefit for it, and also I don't regret it, because it made me feel good during a really busy time. But I think there could have been another way, and I think that if I knew the cost of investing in myself and starting all over, I would have rethunk my expenses in stuff. So, for example, if you've got 2 little kids and you are spending a lot of money on daycare, or you're spending a lot of money on certain types of schools, or there's a lot of other things that are, just really do a full-on inventory of everything and just compare it to your dream. Compare that where you're at now and what is, what's giving you a momentary hit of pleasure versus what could be helpful for you down the track. So that's my main advice with money, is use right now during your bridging job to start feathering your dream nest. And at the very least, it might just be in cutting back certain things that don't necessarily need to be there. We live in a time right now where we have a lot of things that we don't need. For example, I've got cable right now, and I've spoken about it before, and we're going to get to it, but we're going to untether. We've had cable for years, and right now with Netflix and Amazon Prime, or I don't know if it's Amazon Prime, but Netflix and just on-demand viewing, you don't need to be attached to a cable company anymore. It's completely archaic. So there's a lot. That's one example of a lot of things in a life that we're spending unnecessary money on that can be reduced. So, and the savings can be quite extraordinary. So I'd speak to a financial advisor to kind of get a grip on how much money it's going to cost you to make the jump, and also start putting a financial plan in order right now. The third thing that I want to talk about kind of weaves back between the fear of starting over and what you can do right now in the job that you're at. And I didn't do these things, and I definitely would have done them, because now I have to do them anyways. And that's that I would have used my job, even if it felt desperate to get out of there. I would have lightened the mental load of that job, and I would, instead of thinking of it as my career, I would start thinking of it as my bridging job. I would start would be my sugar daddy to help me get to my new life. And I would have used it in every way, shape, or form. I would have used that time in my old career to network more and to tell more people about what I was doing. I would have learned as much. I would have been marketing myself on the job there. I would have perfected the imperfect. So I would have really worked, rather than feeling despondent over my current work situation. I would have done what I could to make life really great for me then. So that might mean I might have had to take a bit more care of myself. Maybe I would have had to try to do a little bit less hours so I could have a little bit of a break. Maybe I would have talked to the boss and say, hey, I'm wondering if there's anything that is more for my skill set, rather than bitching and feeling like, oh, this isn't for me. I would have just put myself out there more and going in the direction of doing the stuff that I love, because let's face it, when you're in a career for a long time, there actually are things that you do really well, that you're really, really good at, and that you probably love. It's just that the drudgery of the job just kind of overpowers all that. So I would have just found ways to make this job less loaded, less of a career, more of a bridging job, and a gateway to learning more and doing more things. The other thing that I would have done, especially if you're going to work in the online space, and chances are anything that you do right now will have some level of online space involved in it. You might have to do, even if you're a bricks and mortar, even if you want to start a bricks and mortar store. Say you want to start running a bakery, but chances are you're going to have a Facebook page. Chances are you're going to have to do some type of social media, some type of networking. I would have jumped on that so much earlier. As a producer, I really wanted to stay behind the scenes, and I didn't get involved in social media at all. You can imagine what a setback that was for me when I wanted to end up working in the online space. So there are so many things, Tracy, that you can do right now while you have the cushion of being in a job that are going to excite you and make you excited about the future, and also at the same time give you that security and safety that you need. Now, from a life coach point of view, I want to talk about the concept of when you mentioned that you desperately want to change from your work life, but you can't walk away from the money, and that it's not fiscally responsible to put your family through less. What I want to do is two things. I mentioned before about how how we had less when my husband and I were raising our kids. We really did have less than other people, but I don't, as far as materialistic things, but as I can tell you that now that my kids are in their 20s, they are all amazing, secure, loved people doing great work in the world, having exciting lives. They're surrounded by good people, and I think it's because they came from parents that were happy during these very, very formative years. I get concerned when women feel that they are desperate to want change because of the impact that comes off in the home. And I also know firsthand what it's like when I started to go out and actually work in an office when my kids were a bit older. That's so challenging to work in the corporate environment 9 to 5 and then have to just do the whole mom thing in between all that time. It's absolutely exhausting. And there is the danger of taking that exhaustion out on the kids, either by not being present because you're so exhausted, or just by being just a complete grouch. So the desperate part, saying that, I think, is your honesty coming out, that this is a change that you want to make. And I think that's something to consider, to weigh that want to change, that want to do something versus that fiscally responsible good girl side. And the thing is, a lot of us were brought up to think that we're only good girls if we are fiscally responsible, if we are responsible and do things even though they make us desperately unhappy. That was the way of the world when we were growing up. That's what a lot of us, I know that's what my dad did. We probably have a parent who was that way, that really worked so hard, but was just miserable. That impacts family, that impacts children. So what is a really cool coaching tool to do for all of you that are feeling torn between wanting change so bad that your soul is screaming for it, and then feeling like you're completely a disaster is going to strike because you're not being responsible, not doing the right thing if you follow your heart. And that is to do something that I talk about in my book. I believe it's How to Find Your Purpose. after 40. No. I think it's Be Your Own Change Guru. I might have done them in both. I'm sorry, I'm just having a brain fart, but I have been awake for 24 hours. But this is to go, it's called the End of Your Life exercise. And you can do it with me right now, unless you're driving or walking right now. And it's to close your eyes. And I want you to fast forward and see yourself at the end of your life. I want you to picture yourself, you're on your bed, and you're in the situation where you're really able to reflect on everything that you've done. It's your choices that you've made, the people that you've hung around, the fears that you have. And I want you to think about the forks in the road, the decision of whether you stay doing something that you don't love, or you stay there in the hope of money. And just to ask yourself, what would you at the end of your life, how would you look at that situation? There's no right or wrong answer. We're all really individuals, but in studies, when they interview people who are dying people, it's never about the money. It's never about the job. It's about the people that and the people that they loved, and the opportunities maybe that they missed, and maybe the fear that they bought into. Time and time again, it always comes down to that. So I want you to just think about getting at that end of your life and being really complete and happy with the decisions that you make right now. And that's really where we're at right now. So you can open your eyes, and you might have some insight from that. You might have to kind of work through it again, but in the meantime, I think that I've given you a few really great things to chew on, and that's that no, you actually you don't have to take the path of jumping without a net. Although that's completely doable, and although that's worked in my life, there are some easier ways to do it. It doesn't have to be that hard. You can literally start today carving out a path. Both of my books, Be Your Own Change Guru and How to Find Your Purpose, really are so helpful for those in-between stages where you don't know what direction to take, where you don't know what your purpose is. And I feel like if I would have had those books for myself during those really fragile times where I was just hating my old career, I could have done the exercises in those books. I could have done those paths while still in my old career and had that kind of safety net, so I could have made this move into this new space that I'm at with some more security. I would have been able to know what I wanted to do, know the cost, start investing in myself, start networking, start learning how to do social media and marketing and sales, and start learning how to write books better, and learning how to create things and build community, and all of those kind of things that I've kind of had to do the hard way, which generally I have no regrets. I think that I never have regrets. I feel like every mistake that we make has incredible value. Every challenge that we have is incredible value. My challenge from going through all these challenges is kind of what I teach today. And I think that also something, Tracy, to know is that the challenge that you have, the challenge that you're going through right now, is that you're actually living out a story that could really inspire women in the same situation. You know, there's a real movement of women in their mid-40s who have young children. It's the way technology's gone, and the way we're able to have children at a much older age. This is very, very different in our society. And if you can really share what you go through as changing your life, and also loving this precious time as kids, being a mom with these young kids, you're never going to get this time back again. So this is a time to really enjoy. If you can share this story of figuring out a way to work through challenge, you may actually even have some business there. And I could, off the top of my head, tell you amazing businesses that you could do in your situation. You could start a blog that could be monetized. You could write books. You could become a life coach. You could start a program to help other women get out of, move into a new space. So those are the 4 or 5 jobs off the top of my head of things that you can do with this challenge. All right. I think that's a lot to chew on for right now, Tracy. So I hope there's something in there that serves you well. And all of you, I hope there's something that you got out of it. In fact, I'd love to know if anything that I've said resonated with you today. Come on over to my Facebook page and leave a message. Also, if you got value, you can do me if you got value out of this podcast, you can do me a big favor and just go to iTunes and leave me a review. That helps me out so much. So thank you. Last but not least, come on over and sign up for my newsletter where you're going to get some inside scoop on my upcoming gray hair book and, more stories from my own personal life of things that I'm learning along the way. Let me do the work so you don't have to, right? I think it's kind of like that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for listening today. Have the most beautiful, beautiful rest of the week, and I look forward to catching you next time. I think I need to go to have a little disco nap. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.